and from Rays of the One Light. These are weekly commentaries on the Bible and Bhagavad Gita, written by Swami Kriyananda and based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. This week's topic is self-effort too is needed. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. These past weeks we have discussed the need for balancing self-effort with receptivity to divine grace. Both are important in the spiritual life. Passive dependence on grace hasn't the magnetism to attract grace. Boastful self-confidence, however, which closes itself off from the higher divine power, is shallow, brittle, and given life's many uncertainties, susceptible to ultimate failure. There is a story in the Bible that illustrates the need to put forth personal effort so as to draw magnetically on the divine power. The story occurs in the Gospel of St. Luke. But as Jesus went, the crowds nearly suffocated him. Among them was a woman who had had a hemorrhage for 12 years and who had derived no benefit from anybody's treatment. She came up behind Jesus and touched the edge of his cloak. As a result, her hemorrhage stopped immediately. "Who was it who touched me?" Jesus asked. When everybody denied it, Peter remonstrated, "Master, the crowds are all around, pressing you on every side." But Jesus said, "No, someone touched me. I felt power going out from me." When the woman realized that she had not escaped notice, she came forward trembling and fell at his feet and admitted before everyone why she had touched him, adding that she had been instantaneously cured. "Daughter," Jesus said, "it is by your faith that you have been healed. Go in peace." Self-confidence and self-effort are necessary as the ignition of a car is necessary to the motor. Of what use the ignition, however, if the motor itself will not work? Wise is he who recognizes the real power in the universe and guides his life by that supreme power. As it says in the Bhagavad Gita, "To those who meditate on me as their very own, ever united to me by incessant worship, I make good their deficiencies and render permanent their gains." Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. I've taken off my mask for this and I'm standing back as far as I can. I'm here with my friends. This is a beautiful story in the Bible and one that is very evocative of this topic of self-effort. We know that this woman had suffered terribly for 12 years. Losing that much blood for 12 years, she must have been so weakened. And maybe she was very intimidated through her weakness. Maybe she didn't feel as though she could approach Jesus when he was by himself and ask for healing. But she put out that effort. Imagine being jostled by that big crowd, and yet she she had the will, she found the strength to go through that crowd, to be carried along. Maybe she strategized, okay, if I come around this corner, maybe I can get close enough to him, or who knows, or maybe she was just carried, maybe it was serendipitous and she found herself close to him and she reached out. She hadn't received any benefit by anybody's treatment. For 12 years, she had tried. But somehow, through her intuition, through her soul's longing, she felt, okay, she had come to that place where she knew, okay, God, you're the only one who can heal me. There isn't anything else but you. You made me. You know all about my suffering. I trust in you. And then somehow she knew of Jesus. Maybe she'd heard him speak before. Maybe she'd been following him. And this was her moment. And she knew in her heart he could help her. That he had God's power. And if she could just touch the hem of his garment, God would come to her and relieve her suffering. And she put out that energy, she had that faith, and she moved to touch his garment. And she felt that power, and he felt it go out of him. He was surrounded by all these people with all their own desires and feelings and needing to be healed and wanting him, wanting to touch him, wanting to get something from him. She alone drew the grace through her longing and through her love. Swami makes the point of it needing to be reciprocal. We can't just say, okay, Lord, I need this, this, and this, and I'm ready. Come to me. We have to say, Lord, I love you. Help me. Be with me. Come to me now. We have to give that devotion. That's what God is longing for. He has everything else in the universe except my love, your love. And that's what he wants. I think, I'm not quoting scripture here, but my feeling is that that's the reason for everything. That's the reason that he created all of this, so that we could have this adventure and come to realize that all the rainbow bubbles are just not worth it. What we really want is him. And we start to develop that love. That's what God is love. And we as his children have to learn how to do it. And that's what we're here for. And when I think of this woman and her affliction, I have to think about Job, my friend Job. And let me just remind you a little of the story of Job, because it's the story of all of us in one way or another. So the story starts off in heaven, and God has his helpers. They're called the sons of God. They're angels, celestial beings all around him. And they are standing at the ready to do God's bidding. And God is talking with them, and he's saying, have you noticed my servant, my beloved friend Job? He is so righteous. He avoids all sin. He loves me. He prays to me. There is none in all of the earth as good as my Job. Well, then, it's interesting. In Hebrew, I learned that the word it's a title. The Satan. It means the opposer. So one of these celestial beings comes forward and challenges God, like Satan, and says, well, yes, Job is praying to you and loving you, but you've given him everything. He's rich, he's prosperous, he has a big family, everybody adores him, he has many friends, he's got everything in this world. Now, if you start taking those things away from him, I don't think he would love you anymore at all, God. I think he would curse you to your face. And God says, I give you the power. He is in your hands. So God accepts this challenge. Says, okay, let's see. What will Job do? And in one day, with Satan at the helm, Job loses all of his cattle, all of his sheep, all of his camels. A desert wind comes and crashes into his house, and his entire family is dead. All in one day. He loses everything and everyone who is dear to him. And he falls down, devastated. He's on the ground. He can't understand how this could have possibly happened. What did he do? And he musters the courage to affirm. And he says, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. And again, he's crying, he's devastated, but he's saying, I came into this world with nothing. I leave this world with nothing. So he's affirming, he's trying, and then he goes into a long, long, long speech of cursing the day he was born. Why was I even born and I'm suffering so much? Why is that? I just want to die. And Satan not only has taken everything away from him, but then he gives him an affliction on top of everything else. He breaks out in boils, and the Bible says from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head, he's just miserable in pain. And his friends come at that point. His friends come, and for many, many chapters in the book of Job, they cry with him. They want to help, but they just keep saying, look, it doesn't say in the Bible the law of karma, but that's basically what they're saying to him. They're saying, we have a just God. You know, these things don't happen for nothing. And did you do this? Did you do that? How about this? And Job is saying, look, I didn't do anything. I swear I didn't do any of those things that you're accusing me of. I didn't do it. And God himself had said that Job was blameless and stainless and completely free of sin. And then Job goes on this emotional sort of, he's beside himself. He's questioning God. He's trying to affirm God. He's in so much pain, so much anguish, that he's just ranting. And then he finally says, God, come to me now and explain this to me, because I can't go on. I need to understand. Don't we know what that's like? Haven't we been in that place, many of us, where we just can't figure it out anymore? We can't understand why something has happened, how it can be, and we demand an answer. It also reminds me of that time in Yogananda's life when he prayed and wept and prayed and wept until he was absolutely spent. And in that moment, that's when God came. And that's when God came to Job, in that moment of stillness where we finally surrender and give it all up. Come to me. And Job, I have to think of, well, what God did was, so Job is saying, answer me, tell me why this has happened. And God comes in the form of a huge black thundercloud, big storm cloud. And there's Job, broken in rags, boils all over his body, completely spent emotionally on the ground. And there's God. And God doesn't tell him, okay, well, look, I had this conversation with the Satan, and he doesn't do any of that. He instead gives Job a vision of the universe. He doesn't explain anything, but he shows Job the complexity, the intricacies, the depth, the wonder, the past, present, future, the interwoven mysteries of life. And he says, can you understand this? Do you think you could run the universe for even a day? Well, of course not. Could any of us understand the deep mysteries of this universe? And God shows him underneath the ground, in the middle of the mountains, in the depths of the ocean. He shows him great, monstrous animals that would just snuff you out in a second. And God says, they aren't evil. They are part of my plan. And Job, at the end of this amazing vision, you have to remember Yogananda getting his first glimpse of cosmic consciousness, and his feet are rooted to the ground. He can't move, and his vision is 360 degrees. Or Arjuna, when he begs Krishna to be able to see Krishna in his infinite form. And Krishna says, okay, you're pure-hearted enough that I can appear to you. Very rare is it that Anyone can have this vision, but let me show you a glimpse of my real self. And Arjuna, every hair stood on end. He was rooted to the ground too. He was just in this rapture. And that's what Job had. A taste of that rapture. And then God leaves. He doesn't answer any questions. He just says, this is a glimpse of what it really is. And Job falls to the ground again in humility. And he realizes he can't even ask God for a reason that this or that happened. It's absurd. There's so much that God is working through everything in this universe. It's so complex and so intricate that all we can do is trust him. I love Job's words, though he slay me, still will I trust in him. And so Job, still with no family, completely covered in boils, he is in perfect peace and happy to trust in God through his humility. And then, as we know, God gave him back everything. He had 7 more children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and all of his land prospered, and he was many times as prosperous as he had been before. But the difference was that he had learned that no matter what happens, to be at peace with God and to love God. And so we see, even though it doesn't spell this out in the Bible, but we see that the opposer, the accuser, the one who creates so much trouble in this world, is God's instrument too, almost like those giant beasts who are so dangerous that God pointed out. Because it teaches us, all the trials that we go through, everything teaches us to be at peace no matter what happens. It's not easy. Not easy at all. But the more that we can meditate and help our magnetism to grow, our attunement to grow, the more that we are able to draw God's grace, just like that woman in the story of Jesus. The more that we can draw close to that vibration, the more we will be at peace in God's light.
I'll just add a few words. She showed up, this woman with the hemorrhage for 12 years. She could have just stayed home, She probably wouldn't feel good. I think that's a pretty safe bet. And she could have given up. You think, I think I remember reading Yogananda saying that if you had been healthy for 50 years and after that 50th year had 6 months of significant illness, would you remember the 50 years, or would you remember the 6 months? It's like, where would your consciousness be? It's very easy to get caught in the momentary, relatively momentary. 6 months versus 50 years, it's, quite a contrast. But during that 6 months, it's going to be pretty unpleasant. And yet, so here she is, 12 years into this thing. She's obviously tried. She's derived no benefit from anybody else's treatment of it. That means she's tried for treatment of it. Guess what? Medical science knows a lot. But you know what? It doesn't know everything. I cannot begin to count how many times I discovered a new word. I don't know. Those of you in the medical profession probably know this already. But I discovered the word tangled is a medical term. There are tangled diseases that relate to the brain. Alzheimer's is considered a tangle. It's a terrific word, because you think thwarting cross currents of ego, they make tangles in your brain, and it messes up the ability of the brain to function. Well, okay, so the medical world of her day couldn't treat it. Well, guess what? The medical world of today might not either have been able to. So there she is suffering. But, as Nirmala pointed out, she got into the river of people and she somehow got her way close to Christ. Now there's an awful lot of other people who got close to him too. He didn't notice them particularly. She must have been touching a whole heck of a lot of other people's hems of their cloaks too. And she didn't get it from them, she got it from him. It takes both. I submit that her faith was not born that morning when she decided to get where he was, because she had heard something. She was on the right wavelength. To be on the right wavelength, we have to try, but we don't just try once or twice. Job, when he's, it seems to me he goes out to like a trash pile or something too. Ashes. He sits in the ashes, okay. It's like he's just really having a hard time of it there. Boils from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. He's just, this is just not a good day at all. And yet, there's an accumulated magnetism, there's an accumulated force of devotion in him that has been built up over a long period of time. Now the Bible doesn't tell us all of that. It doesn't sort of explain all of that. And you may come away with the impression, oh, well, I could just go buy the lottery ticket and I might get lucky today, might be my lucky day, when Christ comes walking by. No, guys, it doesn't work like that. You have to build it over a long period of time. And if she, for 12 years, has maintained the hope that I could be healed, this could be taken away. She may have even arranged, she might have been working out other people's karma on her own body. She may have arranged with Christ in the astral world before she even took birth that she was going to go through this drama just for love of him and to show the power that could move through him for those who were in tune with it, those who were magnetic enough to draw it. All of those things are possible. None of it's explained. You have to sort of take this into your own heart and come to the understanding that you can have from it. But the blessing of it, she gets healed. Now, does she go on and live forever in that body? No, she doesn't. People, go through their lives. They are on the stage for however long they're on the stage, and then they depart. We all see this in our world, and it's a great mystery, and it's a great challenge, and it's very annoying to sort of, to kind of run into why, how, what. Same as Job. His family just gets wiped out in one swell swoop. They're just gone. No explanation. And he's stuck with the aftermath of it. What do you do? What is the habitual turn of your consciousness? For most people, it's just they just get squashed down. But not everybody. And those are the ones who are in the Bible, and they're there for a reason, and they're in the story of life, and they're there for a reason. They're there to show us that we also can do the same thing. Because into every life will come some catastrophe, some commotion, some opportunity. That's what Job had. He had a divinely created opportunity to show what he was made out of. And that job is, Job's job is our job, you could say. We all have to prove to ourselves too. So what will I do? What will I do on the last day of my life? Which way will I turn? Will I turn, will I be looking in the rearview mirror? It's very compelling, this tempting magic of the world with its rainbow bubbles ever ready to burst. I mean, it's real easy to just get caught up in it, big time. God made a very compelling world. And we get to choose. We get to choose where we put our attention. We can put our attention on the tempting magic of the world. And the blasted rainbow bubbles do burst. They're not just ever ready to burst, they're busy bursting. That's kind of what rainbow bubbles do, is they burst. They look really pretty though for a while, and then pow, they burst. And then you're just left with goo. It's like just a handful of goo. Well, we don't want goo. We want something that actually has meaning on the inside. And to get to that takes the discipline to try day by day by day. Davy at Spiritual Renewal Week gave a wonderful talk. All of the talks were wonderful. But there was a moment in her talk where she... actually, this was the question and answer session. So someone had asked the question, so as yogis, should we have like a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, goals for 5 years, 10 years? And she said, it's good to have a goal for today. Let's just stick with today. And I will echo that we can get, and if you run a Fortune 500 company, okay, make a 5-year plan, make a 10-year plan. Well, fine, whatever, good. But if you're a yogi, stick with today. Because you make the 5-year plan, well, what if you finish your 5-year plan in 2? Then what are you going to do? Well, what if you never get to the 5-year plan, and then you're all depressed, and you could easily think, I got it done in 2 years, see how good I am. Or you don't make it in 5 years, and you think, I'm never going to get there. Let's just call it a bad job and give it up. This woman could have given up at year 11. At year 11 and 9 months. She could have given up the day before Christ came to the town. But she didn't. And the Bhagavad Gita highlights this beautifully. Those, I'm not going to be able to quote it exactly, but those who united to me by incessant worship. Incessant. That means not ceasing. That means it's like 24/7. And you might think, God, that just sounds exhausting. Incessant worship. Geez, it's hard enough to do it once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day. Give me this incessant stuff. Think of it in a different way. Think of it as incessant joy, incessant love. What if that was your reality? To be so in love with God that you can't help but be united in incessant worship. That's what brings the ability to stand up to 12 years of suffering or whatever it may be in your life, whatever the particular manifestation. But all of us are here to solve some riddle. It can be as simple as, why does this blasted software, when I have used it so many times and I have done exactly this same set of instructions. But today it decides to not work. Today it won't, it crashes every time I do that. Whatever it may be. It may be just the simplest thing. It may be the most convoluted nightmare. It's still our own opportunity to say, Lord, I still love you. I love you even more, even though I don't understand. God doesn't give us the answers in words necessarily. Just as Nirmala pointed out, very observant. He doesn't answer Job's questions. He just shows him the universe. Well, sooner, when we have that vision, and I say when, not if, when we have that vision, we will be satisfied. We may be a little overwhelmed, but we will also be satisfied. But we have to put in the incessant part ahead of time, or at least the day to day to day to day part that will grow into the incessant part. Then we'll be ready. Let's be ready, not just then, some fine day. Let's actually be ready today itself.